In the last episode of Meta History, we tackled the broken start of the game and the fake machine meta. But the thing that made it fake is that there was a stronger option that we weren't taking advantage of: Splash and Crab. To make sure you don't miss more episodes of this series, please consider subscribing. And let's jump right back into the rise of this weapon. 2 to 3 Splash would start to become more common, and once it got here, it didn't go away for a long time. Splash-O-Matic used to paint slightly better, have cheaper burst bombs, and of course, had Old Crab Tank, which had a 9-second duration, could allow you to act almost instantly after it was used, and was much faster. This special was an absolute monster that locked down these brand new maps we had in Splatoon 3 that had a very limited amount of approach options. This gave it an overwhelming amount of tools to control space while being a pretty good fighter due to having consistent access to double burst. Crab in particular at this time really benefited from a lack of other viable approach options, which meant there weren't really other things that could challenge it compared to today, where several specials are good at dealing with it in either tanking or damage. This also synergized super well with Machine. Both of them have chip damage subs, Machine covered range and could hit around corners, and the specials added to survivability and entry, with Booyah being one of the few things that worked against Crab, while Crab was also good into it. Machine was also one of the few things to be able to oppose Crab tanks with its reliable hitbox. This is some of the most natural and best synergy we ever saw, which allowed just pairing these weapons with each other to dominate matches as the best set of comps in the game, leaving very little room for other options. But there were a few things we saw still climbing the ranks at this time. The first of which was Tetra, a weapon we saw in the previous meta due to the fact that it was very fast at dealing with Machine, a trait that would still be positive for it here. Tetra specialized in an all quick respawn style. Without Cooler being popular, having weapons stack mass amounts of QR and go in to try to pull attention was very common. While Crab was good at holding space, one thing it struggled with was dealing with people who got on the sides or behind it, and that's basically all Tetra tried to do. Go on the sides of the map, get behind people, and pull attention, being able to stall out Crabs more often and having a faster kill time against Machine, but it would still really struggle, mainly because Slider just wasn't great. You would mostly just pop Slider and try to get as far behind them as possible in this case, and then die because you don't have invincibility. Another option that wasn't as common yet was a newer one to the game, Splatoon Stamper. This weapon had a lot of good qualities going for it, and obviously nowadays we know how good it is. The burst damage synergized very well with it, as well as the main weapon's damage numbers, but it was mainly looked at for the fact that it had good object damage into Crab. And while Zipcaster wasn't as strong as it was nowadays, the ability to go and take alternate angles could force Crab to turn around more easily, and paired with the main weapon finally gave you something capable of fighting it. Still though, at the time this was a brand new, very difficult weapon, and there wasn't a whole lot of faith in it. Some people thought that Stamper was actually quite bad due to the fact that its charge slash had slower velocity. We really didn't know just how broken it was. After some time of this becoming more common, we made it to patch 2.0. Before we get into the list of changes, it may have added another bug entirely. If you played a brush or a roller and had your back to the wall, your weapon didn't work. It just did not do damage. Watson documented this really well if you want to learn more. Anyway, this update released on the 30th of November 2022, and I'll leave it to my good and calm friend Kyo to talk about if this fixed any of the problems with the meta at the time.
Wait! No Booyah change? This is crazy! Wait! No Crab change! Yo! They didn't even nerf Splash! They didn't touch Splash at all! Or Machine! This is crazy!
I remember when we thought the patches were gonna do drastic changes more often. It was a good time. Now, version 2.0 didn't have no changes. It notably buffed Stringer and Splatana. Tri-Stringer was actually decently noteworthy at the time since it did do good damage to Crab at a distance. The Wiper change, however, is the more notable one, allowing a horizontal slash to paint a solid line. Bro, how consistent did they make this? Dude, look at this paint!
That is way better.
Yeah! This drastically boosted the weapon's mobility and made it another option to play more aggressively while being able to break Crabs, kind of being a weird hybrid of Splatoon Stamper and Tetra. Zipcaster got a nice ink consumption buff, which would really help the wave of Stampers coming in. And they changed it so you couldn't parry Reef Slider and Ink Vacuum. It's pretty interesting that they're increasing the damage of a blast radius. I'm sure that'll never happen again, but just in case, let's start a tier list and track which specials this happens to. This is also their first attempt to fix Angle Shooter, and it won't be the last. However, the most notable change was the Tenemissile nerf. It was given its 10-second cooldown in this patch, which means options like Flingza, Reflux, and sadly, the Goo Tuber would start to drop off at this point. Missiles were pretty decent at displacing Crab and allowing you to go in, but were kind of on the way out, and this nerf basically sealed it. They also added a few weapons this season. The new weapons were all terrible on launch. Again, we'll get to this later, but it's not good yet. The notable options would be Carbon Roller Deco for shorter range maps, and the Tenatech Splatter Shot, which wouldn't see much use since Tri-Strike hadn't gotten its buff yet anyway. They also added Slosher Deco, which some people were a little hopeful for.
Alright, no, listen. All you motherfuckers right now, take a screenshot of the chat. All you motherfuckers right now, he's coping. It's ass. Screenshot this shit and fucking sub to me in a week when I'm fucking insane and that kid is broken as fuck. Give me $5. Stop fucking coping. Give me your money in a week when I start fucking farming and fucking darting people cross map. You see these darts? Do you see these darts? Dude, if I hitting these darts with just look at these darts! Oh my, I did 3! That's 3 one-shots right there! Come on, man!
Oh, and by the way, dualies also had a bug that got fixed at this time where they could literally roll before they land. Besides all of that, it was clear that the meta didn't really change too much. Really just a bit stronger Stamper and Wiper was more notable. So what about 2.1? Did it fix the game? Well, here's a screenshot from a tournament shortly after its release. The answer is no. This update was released on January 18, 2023. It notably improved Dynamo's damage a little bit, Bamboo's ink consumption, and Nautilus's firing duration, as well as having a slight nerf to Sloshing Machine, as well as Crab Tank. The more notable changes in this patch, though, were the buffs. Tacticooler and Tri-Strike would both get big buffs in this patch, with Tri-Strike getting its better damage and radius, and Tacticooler no longer being negated by Respawn Punisher. Even Reef Slider got its invincibility in this patch. This patch also started the trend of random unnecessary points for special buffs for shooters, most of which would just be undone later, and I won't really talk about too much besides here. This is also the patch that nerfed Ninja Squid, which I realized I haven't really talked about as much. Ninja Squid used to have it so where you would instantly have your trail be hidden when you went into squid form, making it particularly good against longer range options, which were more prevalent back then. This change was to mitigate that. Ninja Squid would still be okay, as it would even get a slight buff, allowing swim speed to stack more easily. However, it would never really be as prominent as it used to. There was also a notable bug fix. Wave Breaker used to actually prevent you from healing even if you jumped over it, which, yes, also applied to big shots. This was secretly a pretty big nerf to the special that no one really realized at the time, and Wave Breaker was decently common as it was okay into Crab Tank since it could damage through it, but this nerf definitely hurt it a bit. So once again, there was a real lack of meta shifts from this patch. The buffs were just small and to weaker options that weren't really that close to making it into the meta, and the nerfs they did do to meta options were barely noticeable. There was a huge gap between stuff like Splashing Machine and everything else. We did find out later in a dev interview that part of the reasoning for this is while the game was new, they didn't want to do too many drastic balance changes, which I get, but 6 months was definitely too long. People had this figured out by like 3 months, so I hope this window is smaller if it exists for Splatoon 4. Version 3.0 launched alongside Fresh Season 2023, adding Kraken, a special that could definitely counter the Crab Tank, along with a notable weapon of 96 Deco, Neo Splash-O-Matic, RIP T-Tech, as well as ZF Charger with Wall Tri-Strike that we just buffed, and Rapid Blaster Deco to the game, in terms of notable options. In addition to that, there's some more small changes here. Burst Bomb gets an ink recovery delay nerf, and Zuka Jetpack and Ultra Stamp are getting damage buffs to affect the Crab Tank. Surely this will fix the game. It's okay, we got another patch in 1.5 months. At least we got the Wahoo World poll. What? There's just another poll. I don't know if I'm a fan of the stick a giant pole in the middle of the zone trend. While the best weapons of this patch wouldn't change, there would be at least a few new options. Zekofin helped reintroduce the idea of running a charger like it or E-Leader into team comps to be a little bit more viable, as Tri-Strike could occasionally shred Crab, even though it wasn't as good of a counter at this time due to Crab being a little bit faster. Generally though, chargers were a bit of a risky option. People did it if they were comfortable with it and it had the potential to headshot Crab, but it was very risky if you didn't have precise aim, and it overlapped on a special that already wants to sit in anchor positions, which you have multiple of in a team comp. We saw a little bit of V-Shot for Zuka, but for the most part, this didn't really work. Yes, it did break Crab better, but you still wasted a resource for it. And Zuka, outside of being good into Crab, wasn't really that good as special because the outside hitbox wasn't a 2-shot at this time, making it incredibly inconsistent. And Splash was in a bit of a similar boat. We saw a little bit of it like you saw in the picture earlier, and it did provide a bit more paint output, but at the end of the day, it also wasn't really worth it over just having another vanilla Splash. If anything, the biggest shift to the meta would probably be the introduction of 96 and Kraken. While it was a little bit slower at the time, Kraken could completely ignore Crab, as well as had options to fight it if it got close enough. The flexibility and distance Crab could be used at meant oftentimes Kraken wasn't close enough to it, but it was enough to be decent when paired with two other factors. The first of which is 96. Due to its mid-range and having a wall, its matchups into both Splash and Machine were pretty decent. It was honestly nice into Tetra if you're going against counter strats, and even versus Splatoon Stamper, wall is one of the few things it struggles to deal with. So in terms of the meta-relevant options, it was honestly pretty good against most of them, making it a more viable counter pick. However, it had one more thing going for it. Old Kraken was so busted. On tower control, the special had almost no knockback on it. You could legit tank Booyah Bombs and just stay on tower, which made its cheese super broken. And on Clam Blitz, not only could you jump to it at this time, but it could just straight up carry a power clam to the basket on its own. So if you don't punish the end lag, which was harder because it was easier to squid roll as the special ended, it could also just score an additional one. The cheese and invincibility made it one of the most hated specials when it was put into the game, but over time I think people realized it wasn't too bad since its speed and limited charge attack did give you ways of avoiding it. For the time being though, hey, it's something that competes against the other options, so I think it's more positive than negative, and the major cheese attributes to tower control and partial to Clam Blitz would be fixed in the next patch anyway. Finally though, after multiple patches failed to address Crab meta properly, 3.1 would finally put the nail in the coffin where things would begin to change. This patch did some notable buffs to other weapons. Snipe Rider gets a damage change here, Bucket gets its consistent 2-shot, and Dualies get a faster dodge roll. But most notably, Burst Bomb goes from 40 to 45% in this patch. And for an additional nerf, Sub Resistance Up was buffed against Fizzy and Burst Bomb, allowing one sub to prevent the 35 damage hit from 3-shotting, which basically got rid of double burst and overall burst spam. Great change. And Crab Tank gets its lag changes when going into ball form, and it now has a decent bit more end lag when the special is broken. This change would finally tone Splash down from the best weapon in the game to just a pretty good top tier weapon. The special would still be good as we get into the future changes here, but it would no longer define the meta. Anyway, in the other special changes, another radius increase for Ink Vacuum, another damage of a blast radius increase, and a radius increase for Reef Slider, and a radius increase for Ultra Stamp, along with some actually pretty decent buffs, allowing the special to be turned a little bit more easily, as well as having that giant outside hitbox. The real thing that would change this patch is the buffs to the Gutu. No, I'm just kidding. I mean the ballpoint Splatling. Not only did it get 190p recently, but Inkjet didn't just get its height buff here, but a 43% blast radius increase. Being attached to a strong weapon with the ability to shred Crab, the meta was finally about to change. But we'll have to get into that more next time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode.